This is a continuation of my experiment/exercise that aims to just overcome my overthinking and to take action. So this is hopefully something that will be useful to people who want to learn English, communication, improvisation. So yeah, all right. Anyways, let's begin. This is totally improvised because I don't really like making up scripts. And also it's a good skill to practice because it's very useful when it comes time to present things either at work or having conversations with people. Improvising is, well, to me, it's the skill of just coming up with things or being able to organize your thoughts very quickly on the spot, which will help with many different kinds of situations. Aside from improvising, communication, I feel, is really important because, without communication, we can't get our ideas across, we can't tell stories, and stories are such wonderful ways to communicate. They really appeal to the human condition, the emotions that live within us. So speaking of which, one of the movies, and I'm jumping into movies now because I love cinema. One of the movies that I used to watch when I was younger that I absolutely adored was The King's Speech. And I watched this, I remember the first time I watched it was probably when I was in the army. And at that time, so I was probably 18, I had just graduated from high school. This was 2012, if I remember correctly. 2013, I probably went into the army. And I was just finished with my basic training. So if you had to go into the army in Singapore, you would know that you have to spend about, I think it was 3 to 6 months. I can't remember completely. But you have to spend a good amount of time in basic training in an island somewhere not too far from where Singapore is. And so I had just finished basic training. I had been assigned to my new unit, and it was the first time I got to go back home and just, wind down and relax with technology. Because in that island where you did basic training, you couldn't bring like camera phones. Back then I didn't even have a camera phone because I was on a budget and I was a student. Even if I did have a smartphone, we couldn't bring it in because military restrictions and things. And of course that meant we can't bring in laptops, like iPads or anything like that. So I got back from the island, we took a ferry across the ocean, I suppose you could say. And I got back home, and the first thing I did after I put my bag down is I went into the room and I opened up my laptop and I plugged in my hard drive, which had all my movies in there. And I was saving this one movie which I hadn't seen but I saw really great reviews for, and it was The King's Speech. And when I saw that movie, I'm not sure if any of you had seen this before, it was so well shot. The scenes in that movie were fantastic. They were artistic. They just had an element of, I'm not sure what you would use as the word, but it was beautiful. And not only was it beautifully shot, the acting was amazing. So if you haven't seen The King's Speech before, it's a true story. The King of England, back in World War II, he became a very prominent figure in the war. But we who've lived long after World War II may not know that this particular king, he grew up with a stutter. A stutter is when you stumble on the first couple of noises or sounds of a word. So you might say I need, before you're able to get the full word out, you're kind of stuck almost on the first parts of a word. So this king had that condition. It's a story in the context of World War II where he had to overcome his stutter. What I loved about it was, if you look beyond the context, it was a story about friendship and perseverance, and how with the right people and the right mindset, you can do great things, but also you can find great joy and love in relationships with the people around you. So if you haven't seen The King's Speech yet, it's relatively old now, but it still looks like a pretty modern movie, I would say. Definitely worth watching. It's quite a heartwarming movie, I feel. Even though it's set in World War II times, which is a horrible place in history, the film itself was quite heartwarming and I quite enjoyed it. From that film, after I watched it, because I'm not sure how many of you grew up with a speech impediment, I, at the time, also had a speech impediment which I was working through. Not as bad as the stutter, mine was more of a lisp. So if you don't know what a lisp is when you say your S's, like the S sound, instead of saying S, you say SH. So like the shame, day. The funny thing is, I didn't know that I had that speech impediment until high school, because my friends, who I thought were my friends, kept mispronouncing my name. And at first I thought that it was just some, maybe inside joke I didn't really get. After a while, I got curious and I was like, why do they keep saying my name like that? It's meant to have the S sound and not the SH. And I realized later that it was because I was saying my name like that and they were just copying me and like making fun of me, but because I said my name like that. And that really, once I had that realization, I was determined to work through it. And so what I started doing was I started to record myself on back then, I didn't have a smartphone, but the phone I did have, there was a phone that had this little circular ring thing that you could rotate. It was pretty fun to play with. I think it was LG, potentially was the brand. But you could record on that phone. Even on a Nokia, you could probably record. So what I did was, once I realized, I would, on my way, to and from school, because I had to walk to school back in the day, I would take out the phone and I would just start recording myself saying things. And I would play back the recordings and listen to them, and I would try and give myself feedback, like, okay, I don't like the way that this particular thing sounds, and I'll just practice and try to make my tongue move differently, try to make my mouth move differently. And so I had to really craft my voice, and it was a lot of hard work because my teeth, back then I had to get braces, and I couldn't get braces until after the army. And so my teeth were I had one teeth that was further back than the others. One teeth was up here like a small little fang, and it was tough, but it was doable. I'm hoping that as I'm speaking now, you can't tell that I had this condition. And hopefully you can't tell because I've continued to work on it until today. I'm still working on improving myself. Now I'm working more on the shape of my mouth, potentially. And I've noticed as well in the last couple of videos I made, my tongue is it's sometimes interrupting. It's extending to the sides of my teeth. And I want to try and address that. So yeah, that movie, The King's Speech, was incredibly inspiring. It was such a heartwarming film, and thinking back on it now, I didn't realize this when I first saw it, but thinking back on it, it made me really think about how I treated my friends and how grateful I should have been for anyone that was my friend and is my friend today, or anyone that I'm lucky enough to have a nice relationship with. So if you have if it makes you think of any friends or family that perhaps you haven't fully appreciated, it's never, well, I wouldn't say never, but it's probably not too late, and you can still do something about it. Same goes with your communication skills. If you grew up quiet like I did, introverted like I was, there's still time, and everyone can grow, everyone can improve and change. And that's the message I want to give in this video today. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.